Alright, I have finally seen the finale of the Nightly Manor, and, it's interesting. It was alright, at least better than episode 2. There was some really neat action and parts that made me speculate, but again, the finale was riddled with issues that made watching it disorienting. I'll go over the finale and list off my problems with it like last time, but this time, I want to go over ways to fix these problems. Because these issues can be avoided, and I want to offer ways to avoid them for when Alan works on another project. Okay, I guess it's time to get right into the finale. So we start off with a flashback of Spray Paint and Mouse before they found the mansion. Spray Paint gets kicked out of the bar and says, "Who needs you guys anyways?" He then trips off the curb of the sidewalk and says, "Come on, Mouse, let's go." Then Mouse says, "Third time this week." And we've already got a problem because that is the end of the scene. Are you kidding me? I was actually really excited when the episode started because Spray Paint is my favorite character in the show, and I wanted to see what he and Mouse were like before they found the mansion. And I thought this flashback would give us insight on their relationship, but instead, all it did was show that Spray Paint used to be an alcoholic and Mouse didn't seem to support it. That could be useful information, but it's not important to the story at all. And it doesn't make much sense because Spray Paint is never drunk during the show. His alcoholism is never hinted at, nor does it affect the story. Like I said earlier, I think this scene would have felt much more impactful if the importance of Spray Paint and Mouse's relationship were presented in this flashback. That would have emphasized how much Mouse meant to him. For example, they could have had Spray Paint get kicked out of the bar and he could have gotten sad about getting rejected by his friends. Then Mouse could have consoled him. She could have said something like, "No matter how many times you get rejected by others, I'll always be by your side." That would have made for a flashback with actual reason and emotional substance. Or as another example, the flashback could have explained why they're so crazy about food. They could have been looking for food, starving, and only having each other. But instead, we get this, and it's incredibly underwhelming. Alright, moving on. We see Top Hat and Sketchpad looking for unlocked doors and having very little luck. We then cut to Speaker and GPS, who had found the mansion's front door. Speaker sees that one of the door handles are broken and then spots a very conveniently placed crowbar. I have no idea how it got there, it just wasn't there earlier, so I have no idea how it's here now. He asks GPS to use the crowbar to pry the door open, and GPS very creepily says, "No, I don't think I can." And so Speaker takes the crowbar and starts prying the door open himself. GPS then takes a glance around as if he's making sure no one else is looking. He's also holding the second crowbar that was also there for some reason. Okay. We quickly cut to the other people in the mansions for a couple seconds. GPS smashes Speaker with the crowbar. Alright, I will give the show this. The way this moment is executed is really cool. Just the eerie silence and the beating of GPS's heart or whatever that sound is, along with the dramatic lighting and his lifeless smile. It's so good. And as weirdly as the twist was set up, it's just cool to see how visually dramatic this scene is. We cut back to Top Hat and Sketchpad, who are still looking for an exit. And it's at this point where I started to really get fed up with Sketchpad. I know, I said that I like Sketchpad in my part 1 discussion, but that was before the show started to incorporate more intense scenes. And after that really cool scene with GPS and Speaker, just seeing Sketchpad say another stupid joke just made me realize how much he doesn't fit into the show. I get it, the Nightly Manor is a pretty dark show. It's about objects getting murdered in a mansion, and a comic relief character can be used to ease the tension. And I do like myself a good comic relief character. They can be pretty fun, but that's just it. I like a good comic relief character. Sketchpad's personality seems like it belongs in a meme object show. His dialogue is barely ever natural. He makes a lot of unsubtle references, like, "Oh, if only recovery centers existed," or "Did you know that this character from a different object show is this color?" And I get that silly references like that are funny in their own way, but in another way serious and frightful object show, he just sticks out like a sore thumb and ruins the immersion. I think some good ways to make Sketchpad more bearable would be to keep him from saying referencey jokes and also make his dialogue more natural. Have him make jokes that make sense in the show's world. Maybe instead of having him reference other object shows, have him reference past experiences he's had with Speaker. Maybe he references a past case he's tried to crack with him. That would have his dialogue make much more sense, and it would be a lot less immersion breaking. And speaking of dialogue, don't make him say silly things just for the sake of saying a silly thing. That doesn't make him feel like a character. That makes him feel like a tool to ease the tension every now and then. I understand that's what he's supposed to do, but your character shouldn't feel like a tool. It should feel like a character. Here's an example of what I would have him say. Imagine him and Top Hat are checking the doors and Sketchpad would say something like, "Man, I haven't seen this many doors since Speaker and I searched our neighborhood for illegal Girl Scout cookies." Admittedly, that wasn't very good, but that kind of joke has the same confusing, awkward, silence-inducing energy that his other jokes do. It's a kind of joke that can exist in the show's world alone, and there's something that happens in the story that makes him say this. Alright, I think that's enough ranting about a couple pieces of paper. Sketchpad mentions that he hasn't heard from Speaker in a while. He calls him on the walkie-talkie asking for an update and gets a response from GPS saying that he needs help and to come to the kitchen. Sketchpad doesn't recognize the voice and just says that whoever it is, he will listen to them because he understands proper walkie-talkie protocol. You see, that kind of joke is the kind I like to hear from them. So they make their way to the kitchen and meet up with GPS. Top Hat asks what happened to the two of them and GPS says that they got split up. Top Hat then asks how he got Speaker's walkie-talkie if they got split up. There's a little awkward silence between them until GPS throws a cleaver at them. He begins to charge with another one until Sketchpad tases him and he falls to the ground. Sketchpad celebrates until GPS gets right back up and starts chasing them again. And Sketchpad doesn't think to tase him again because why would he? After all, he only did it for a random joke. What other reasons are there? I'm sorry, but this pointless joke could have been written out of the script and the scene would have been much more intense and much less frustrating. This is another example of Sketchpad almost ruining a scene that was otherwise really cool. At least show that the taser ran out of batteries or something so he has a reason to not use it again. Anyway, the two start running from GPS and they make their way to the front door. Sketchpad grabs one of the broken off door handles and starts bashing the bottom of the door with it. "Sorry buddy, but I don't think you know how doors work." GPS continues to approach them but gets tackled by spray paint. He tells them to get out of here as he continues to fend off GPS. As they fight, Sketchpad manages to get the door open because of course he does, Osborne Dorsey was an idiot anyway, and Top Hat and Sketchpad leave the mansion. Once they escape, GPS begins to glitch out and some text saying failsafe execute, entity delete, as well as a countdown appears on his face. The countdown gets to 0 and GPS blows up, taking spray paint in the mansion with him. Sketchpad and Top Hat are the only two that escape the mansion alive. And can I just say, what an awesomely executed climax. There are problems with it that I'll get to in a bit, but when I first watched, just hearing GPS's glitchy, disturbing garbles as spray paint fends him off, then having him grow quiet and slowly count down from 5 until he explodes, and having the screen flushed with black and white while Top Hat and Sketchpad look on in horror, it's exhilarating. It's really something you don't ever see in an object show, and it was just so incredibly thrilling to watch. But I can't not be annoyed by the fact that when GPS's face says execute time in 5, 4, 3, 2, spray paint doesn't think to run away. And it just sucks to know that Spray Paint has had it rough in this show. He was suspected of being a killer and had to deal with the stress. He had to mourn the loss of one of his close friends that he didn't even get to say goodbye to. And even then, he fended off GPS and was the only reason Mouse and Sketchpad didn't get murdered. And in the end, he didn't even get to live to tell the tale, all because we needed one more character to die for no reason. He didn't even get any recognition for it. I am kind of biased here since Spray Paint is my favorite character in the show, but I'm not gonna pretend like I'm not frustrated about my favorite character dying for almost no reason. Also, this is a pretty small detail, but I still think it's ridiculous that Sketchpad busted open the door just by smacking the handle against it. He's a tiny bundle of thin paper, so I would have liked it if instead he slid under the door and smashed it open from the outside with a large rock or something. That is pretty silly, but come on, we're talking about Sketchpad here. Silly is his middle name. And I feel like that makes more sense than just whacking a door and hoping for the best. So moving on, as the credits roll, Top Hat is shown talking to some people, presumably police officers. He says how shocked he is that GPS would just go crazy like that. One of the officers says that a fringe theory of theirs was that GPS's actions were against his will. With the remains of him that was left from the explosion, they found a chip that was foreign to his model. It was badly damaged, so they couldn't find out what it contained. The officer says that their investigation of the situation will continue until they find all the answers they need. And that's the end of this chapter of the Nightly Manor, and wow, what a beautiful mess. That's honestly the perfect short description of the show to me. It was a lot of fun to watch, and it was really interesting, but it had a lot of issues. The story overall was pretty cool, but the more I think about what exactly happens in each story beat, the more holes I start to find in the story. Like, if the writers were to analyze the story a little more and fix up some plot holes, this show would have improved drastically. But when you look at the narrative with all its flaws, the show feels like it was written as it went along and didn't have a lot of thought putting into reviewing reviewing the story. And because of that, I can't say that I love the Nightly Manor. I just like it. It could do with some improvements. The visuals and the atmosphere are what saved the show for me, but it had the potential to make a really captivating story. Next time Alan and his team work on a project like this, I want them to put more care into their narrative. Have each scene feel like they have a reason to exist, don't just have a scene happen for the sake of happening. I want them to really make sure each plot point makes sense, have each character feel like a character and do logical things. And if a character's logical actions just make the situation too easy to get out of, then limit them. The script didn't feel very thought out, it needed more people to review it and give it feedback before more production began. I hope Chapter 2 takes this information into account because I think that's what the show needs in order to improve. So, here's to Chapter 2 and a better overall show.